Hello again, everyone. I'm Ranger Richard at Gateway Arch National Park, and for the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to take you on a tour of July's night skies using a planetarium program called Stellarium, which gives a realistic view. The sights in the sky I'll be telling you about can all be seen with your unaided eyes, although it could be good to bring along a pair of binoculars in order to make small objects appear larger. They also can help you to be able to spot stars that are too dim to be visible through the light pollution in your area. Another thing that's good to bring along at this time of year is some sort of bug spray, as we don't want you to get bit up while you're stargazing. So let's bring up the Stellarium program now. As I mentioned last month, it's usually good to start in the west while stargazing, as Earth's rotation will carry the stars, moon, and planets there lower and lower until they set. Our two early evening planets this month are still Venus and Mars. Venus is usually the closest planet to the Earth, and since it's closer to the Sun and has a cloudy atmosphere, it receives a lot of light from the Sun and reflects it really well. To spot Venus in July, go out about 9:15 or 9:30 p.m. and face west. If you don't live near St. Louis, find your local time of sunset and go out about 45 minutes to an hour later. Venus should be visible as a bright star-like object low in the western sky. You know, I don't see anything. Is that tree from last month still in the way? We can get rid of it by pressing this button. Ah, there's Venus. Now the computer program makes it look bigger than it would normally to the unaided eye. It just looks like a very bright star. This all tells us that this summer it's necessary to find a spot with an open view to the horizon to find Venus. The view of Venus will improve this fall and early winter. Once the sky gets a little darker, you should notice a much dimmer star-like object to the upper left of Venus early in July. Let's move ahead in time a bit in order to simulate this. As time passes, Earth's rotation causes Venus to sink lower and lower while the sky gets darker. We moved ahead in time about 20 minutes now, and it's now dark enough to notice this object to the upper left of Venus, and that is the planet Mars. Binoculars can help you spot Mars more easily through the twilight and also pick up its orangish color. We can watch the conclusion of the race between Venus and Mars that we talked about last month. As the days pass, we can advance the program and see how Venus steadily catches up to Mars since Venus moves faster in its orbit around the Sun. So right now we are set for July 1st, and let's just move ahead day by day and see what happens. Once again, this is Venus, this is Mars. Each day Venus gets closer to Mars, while Mars drops closer to the horizon as it appears more and more on the far side of the Sun. The most interesting nights to watch will be July 11th, 12th, and 13th. On the 11th, the thin crescent moon can be seen just to the right of Mars and Venus. And the next evening, the moon moves further to the upper left, and we'll have to scroll in just a bit more now to see Mars at all at this scale. So let's go do that. So quite close on the night of the 12th, and then closest of all, the night of July 13th. There we go. The moon now quite far to the upper left, and then Venus and Mars quite close together. As we continue on past July 13th, you can notice that Mars continues to move downward, and by the night of our next Gateway to the Stars program, July 17th, Mars is noticeably to the lower right of Venus. On the other hand, Venus is closing in steadily on the bright star Regulus, which it will appear closest to on the night of July 21st. This continues as the month goes on, and by the end of July, Mars will be lost in the western twilight. Let's shift our attention to the north. We'll bring our horizon back now. And as we move north, a familiar pattern of stars becomes visible. The Big Dipper. The three stars here form the Big Dipper's handle, and these four form the bowl. The star that joins the bowl and the handle together is a bit dimmer than the rest. You have to look closely. I learned in Cub Scouts that the two stars in the bowl that are farthest from the handle always point to a fairly bright star in the sky. It's none other than the North Star, or Polaris. Polaris is important because if you draw a line from the center of the Earth through the North Pole and out into space, if you extend that line far enough, it points very close to Polaris. This means that as the Earth rotates, as the night passes, the stars appear to revolve around Polaris. And so we're going to recreate that now. Hope you don't get seasick, but it's a great way to illustrate the motions of the sky. To make it easier, I'll draw in the constellation lines. And so now you see the Big Dipper, and then the Little Dipper is quite a bit dimmer than the Big Dipper, except for these two stars called the Guardians, which are fairly bright. So let's move ahead in time a few hours and see what happens with the sky. You can see the rotation. We're at about midnight now in late July. And let's stop about here, about 2 o'clock in the morning. And you notice by 2 in the morning that now the Big Dipper is very low in the northern sky. In fact, a tree is blocking one of the stars. And this tells you that at times it's hard to see the Big Dipper. But nevertheless, the two stars always do point to Polaris. Back to an early evening view now. And let's take a close look at Mizar, the star in the bend in the handle of the Big Dipper. If your eyes are good enough and your sky dark enough, can you see a tiny star right next to it? Let's scroll in a bit to see it. There you go, you start to see it now. The little star's name is Alcor, and it used to be a test of vision in ancient times. If you're having trouble spotting Alcor, try using binoculars. They should bring it out easily. If you have access to a telescope at home, if you look at Mizar, you will notice that Mizar is itself a close pair, and is seen in the telescope, but Alcor will look quite a ways from it. Summer evenings are the time of year when the fewest number of really bright stars, we call them first magnitude, are visible. And the Big Dipper's handle can help us locate two of them. You can follow the arc of the Big Dipper's handle to the very bright star Arcturus, and then you can speed on, or some would say spike, to Spica. So arc to Arcturus from the Big Dipper's handle, and speed on or spike to Spica. Arcturus and Spica are noticeably different in color. Arcturus, to me, looks a little bit yellowish orange. If you light a flame, the hottest part of the flame is blue, white, yellow, orange, and red. So Arcturus probably has a similar temperature to our yellow sun, maybe just a little bit cooler, while Spica, being to me somewhat bluish white, is noticeably hotter than the sun. However, Arcturus looks brighter because it's much closer to us. Another contrasting first magnitude star is named Antares, and we could see it fairly low as we direct our gaze to the southern horizon. Antares, if you look closely, definitely looks more reddish than Arcturus, so it's even cooler, and its name means rival of Mars. Antares is the brightest star in the beautiful constellation of Scorpius, which really does look a bit like a scorpion if you have a dark enough sky or use binoculars to glimpse the dimmer stars. We'll scroll in a little bit, see it just a little better. Here you go. These three stars form the scorpion's claws, and then you could follow the body past Antares. Again, very close to the southern horizon, then curving back up as the tail. And then these last two stars, a very close pair, form the stinger. And they also have a nickname of the cat's eyes. You need a very good southern horizon and a really clear, dark night to see the entire scorpion with your unaided eyes from the latitude of St. Louis. Let's bring up the animation that's available in the Stellarium program to tell you one of my favorite star stories. Now, I am what's called an interpretive park ranger, which means I tell the story of the arch, the old courthouse when I'm over there, St. Louis history, westward expansion, all the people who were part of it. But this is a chance to also indulge in my hobby of telling stories about the sky. This legend comes from Greek mythology, and a lot of this was also adapted by the Romans as well. The legend involves Scorpius and also the famous constellation Orion the Hunter. Orion grew very boastful of his skill as a hunter and threatened to kill all the animals on Earth. Foolishly, he said this to the wrong female deity, Artemis, the goddess of the hunt, and she sent our scorpion to kill Orion. Zeus, the king of the gods, saw all this and decided to place the hunter and scorpion into the sky, but as far apart as possible to prevent further trouble in the heavens. To this day, Scorpius shines best on summer evenings, while Orion dominates the winter. We'll see if we can get a peek at Orion at the very end of this sky tour. The next group of stars noticeable to the left of the Scorpion is Sagittarius. Some say that the archer is just about to fire his arrow at the Scorpion in order to avenge Orion's death. I really can't make anything like an archer out of all these stars, but perhaps you can imagine a teapot, with this star forming the lid, these three the spout, and then these stars the handle. These last stars, together with the lid, make up a small version of the Big Dipper. In fact, it's nicknamed the Milk Dipper. And this reminds us that when we look at Scorpius and Sagittarius, we're looking towards the center of our Milky Way galaxy. If you can head out to a dark sky location at this time of year, the band of the Milky Way stretches across the sky. If you can just cruise along this band with binoculars or a small telescope, huge numbers of stars can be seen. It's a lot of fun. As we finally move to the east, three bright stars, known together as the Summer Triangle, stand out. Highest up and brightest is Vega, which I think is my favorite star in the entire night sky. Vega shines noticeably bluish white, so it's a hot star, and it's rather nearby at just 25 light years away. Altair and Deneb complete this celestial trio, and we'll talk more about them in next month's Sky Tour. As we scroll in, you can see that the stars near Vega make up a small parallelogram, and the constellation is named Lyra, the harp or lyre. And there's a great story about Lyra, which I'll share with you. A great musician named Orpheus was the owner of this lyre, and his beautiful wife Eurydice unfortunately stepped on a poisonous snake and was bitten, and she died. Orpheus was grief-stricken and decided to venture down to the underworld to try to rescue Eurydice. He played his sweet music with the harp and managed to melt the cold heart of Hades. Hades agreed to allow Eurydice to come back from the dead on just one condition. Orpheus could never look back at her until they had both left the portal of the underworld. Sadly, Eurydice kept silent, and Orpheus eventually started wondering whether or not she was still following him. And just before exiting into the living world, Orpheus couldn't help himself anymore and looked back, only to see Eurydice snatched away from him forever. Grief-stricken, Orpheus roamed the world aimlessly for the rest of his life, playing his lyre. He received countless marriage offers from women, but in his grief, he refused them all. The ladies eventually got angry with him and killed him, and Orpheus's lyre was placed into the sky to help us remember this story. At the beginning of the program, I mentioned our two early evening planets, Mars and Venus. If you stay up later and look in the southeast, you can see two more planets, as we're going to see here. As early as about 11:30 p.m. in early July, and then at 9:30 by early August, you can see Saturn first, and then a little bit later, about an hour later, you can see Jupiter rising, as we're going to see now. Jupiter and Saturn will be our top two telescopic targets through our August, September, and October Gateway to the Stars programs. However, for July 17th, we have something really special for you. Dr. Tyler Nordgren from the Space Travel Bureau is going to be with us, and he's going to talk about astronomy in the national parks, some of the opportunities available for stargazing in these beautiful locations. Dr. Nordgren has also created some great vintage-style poster art, as you can see here. Coming up July 17th at 8 p.m., Astronomy in the National Parks on Facebook Live, facebook.com/STLastro. As we return to our sky view, as always, at the end of the program, I like to run the sky, run the Earth's rotation, and show what the rest of the night looks like. And we'll do that now. In the late evening, as we mentioned, Jupiter and Saturn are rising in the southeastern sky. And as the hours pass, you see them rise higher and higher in the sky. They'll be best seen, as we mentioned, this late summer and fall. As we move towards dawn, the sky lightens up, and just as the dawn is breaking, we begin to see the stars of Orion the Hunter appearing above the eastern horizon. And as we mentioned much earlier during the program, Orion is rising in the east, just as Scorpius has set in the southwest, as far apart as can be. We'll have some more star stories and things to show you next month. We'll see you then. Thank you for watching.